In a past video on stealth, I made reference to the game Ridge Runners and Gravel Stompers, and one of the subscribers rightfully called me out on this and said, hey, no fair referring to something, a game, that none of us know how to play. So let's discuss that when we come back. I'm Dr. Christopher Larsen, a veteran of the U.S. Army Infantry, founder of One Shepherd Leadership Institute, and author of Small Unit Tactical Doctrine. Ridge Runners and Gravel Stompers are sort of the impetus of One Shepherd, I should mention. It was playing these tactical games in the Boy Scouts who taught us these games and led to the development and the founding of One Shepherd. Nonetheless, it's a fantastic game that we've used in One Shepherd for many, many years because it teaches the concepts of stealth, of concealment and movement and teamwork. So, great game. I tried to look it up and found out that, in fact, while there are Ridge Runners and Gravel Stompers, and Ridge Runners turns out to be this huge commercial name, they're not the game. I can't find a link. That's what I thought to do, is just simply link to a description of the game, how to play. Couldn't find any, so we're going to do this today. All right. The principal thing about Ridge Runners and Gravel Stompers is to have an objective, and you see the little light bulb hanging there beside the tree. That's typically how we would do it. You have to set up the field, which really means identify a good field. So you want a tree or some standing object that you can dangle a light, because Ridge Runners and Gravel Stompers is generally played at night. Can it be played in the day? Yes, you could. You would do a brightly colored fluorescent, I don't know, tennis ball or something dangling from a tree, although I've never personally played it in the daytime. But the concept still holds true. Then you have a light. It's dangling from a tree. Try not to put it on the tree trunk, because people will be coming to tag this light at high speeds on foot. And yes, they will almost invariably run smack into the tree because they're not able to stop themselves and break their arm, their collarbone, or their leg. Dangle it out away from the tree trunk. That's part of it. Now, the rest of it is finding the fairest place. This is a form of hide and seek, as you might guess. It's just a more complex form of that. And if the grass around the tree and other vegetation, let me put it that way, bushes, grass, trees, if it's very dense, if this is a tree in a forest, that's going to make the Ridge Runners' job so easy and really hamper the Gravel Stompers. Flip side is also true. If this tree is in a parking lot or a perfectly mowed grass, which is acceptable, but it makes the Gravel Stompers' job ridiculously easy and the Ridge Runners almost impossible. The best thing is to find a farm, perhaps a city park, or someone's just an open field on someone's land, maybe close to their house or something like this, whereby the grass is, you don't want waist-high grass, but maybe it's not recently mowed, right? The point is that in times of darkness, if a couple of people are laying flat enough in the grass, is the grass enough to cover them? That's a good thing. If the grass allows them to, come up on their knees and travel like crawling without being exposed, then once again, this is not a good thing. It makes the Ridge Runners' job way too easy. So you see what I'm saying here? You've got to find a tree that's isolated in the middle of a field by nominally 100 by 50 meters. Can it be less? Yes. Can it be more? Yes. But the idea is about 50 meters of isolation for this tree with a dangling light. Then what's to the left and right of that? What's circling around it? Trees or even houses and buildings. That's perfectly fine. So this is the most important thing, is finding a field that is appropriate. And again, you're not going to be carrying firearms or anything like that here, so you could use a city park. At most, you're going to camouflage your face. You might be wearing a military, ghillie suit, whatever it is. I mean, if you're doing all of that, maybe you do want to stay out of the city park and go to private land. But the reality is that you could even play this in normal street clothes without all the face camo, or just, a balaclava to pull up over your nose or something like this, and just wearing subdued color civilian clothes. That's how you'd get away with playing it in a park, I would imagine. Anyway, now that you've identified the perfect field and you understand that the objective is to get to that dangling light and touch it, That's the Ridge Runner's objective. Then you also need to know that the Gravel Stompers are going to try and stop the Ridge Runners. So let's discuss how we break into teams. First off, the Ridge Runners. The Ridge Runners are the bad guys, they're the invaders, and they're the ones that are really practicing their stealth, okay? They're going to try to infiltrate as closely as possible so they can get up, make their last minute dash to the light, tag the light, and of course you just simply keep a simple count. Each person that tags it, that's a score. You only tag it once and you just sit down by the tree, you're done. If you get tagged as a Ridge Runner, if a Gravel Stomper tags you at any point, you're out. Okay, so you're not going to get a score. And that's how it's done. And of course you're going to switch sides, but nonetheless, let's stay with what we have. You have the Ridge Runners. How many Ridge Runners? I don't know, but you break into buddy teams. This is battle buddies. No one operates alone. Now, it may be that your buddy gets tagged and you wind up being alone, and that's perfectly fine. But ideally, they are formed into two-man teams. They camouflage the best they can, and they don't need battle rattle, they don't need weapons, they don't need nods, they don't need radios or anything like that. Now, what if you have 10 guys on the Ridge Runner team? Well, then you have 5 buddy teams. Obviously, if you have a third man out, you just make a 3-man team. So the Ridge Runners then are given a specific amount of time. Let's say it's 9 o'clock at night, and we're going to give the first iteration a half hour. We say go. They break into their battle teams and they go running outside of the playing field. They have to enter the playing field from whatever angle they want. So they can go run over there to the buildings and try to approach from that. They can run over to the trees and try to approach from that. They may be able to switch sides by operating outside of that field, but what they're trying to do is position themselves for an angle of attack, that is an infiltration, so that they can sneak in. And sometimes they just make a mad dash for it, which is why it is so important that you have that 50 meters so that the Gravel Stompers are given plenty of time to react. So that's what Ridge Runners are. They're essentially two-man battle buddies. You try to make the sides even in terms of the number of people. Now, on the Gravel Stompers, what they're trying to do is protect the light. So they want to tag as many of the Ridge Runners as they possibly can. It's a simple tag. You don't need to tackle. You don't need to beat up anybody. It's a simple tag. So they are not hiding, and they're not trying to hide. Traditionally, what we played with were flashlights, because again, this is traditionally played at night. And so you have flashlights. Every hunter team has a flashlight. We break them into 2-man hunter teams. Can you have 4-man hunter teams? You certainly can, but of course, 4 people generally move slower than 2, so it's better to have 2. As we got more and more sophisticated with it, we started having spotter teams with night vision, right? Thermal, whatever it is, Gen 3. And some people will say that's not playing fair, and so they rule that out. But if you do allow it, you can either have individuals or spotter teams very close to the trees, and what they do is they simply call out anything that looks suspicious to the hunters. Now, you can do this even without night vision. You can still have spotter teams that protect inside the concentric rings, and hunter teams outside. The hunter teams are trying to flush people up, and they're given flashlights, and that's really all they need. You know, it's amazing when you're playing this game how many times you get flashlighted as a Ridge Runner, and you're absolutely certain that the Gravel Stompers saw you. They're only, 20 meters away, and they hit you with a flashlight, and you're just prone in the grass or beside the tree trunk, and you're just going, oh my gosh, surely they saw me, and they walk right past you. You get to learn just how close you can get to another human being and not be discovered at night. The Gravel Stompers will tell you, you didn't camouflage your hands. What gave you away was the whiteness of the back of your hands, or something like this. So it allows you to, again, work on that stealth of approach. It also is teamwork, so you can see how it works. It's a very simple hide and seek, but the ollie ollie oxen free is that you have to tag the dangling light. Chem light, flashlight, it doesn't really matter. That's how the game is played. You're given a specific amount of time. Usually it's a half hour per iteration. And then however many people manage to tag the light, I mean, you do call it out. As a general rule of thumb, we call out 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. And of course, when you scream 1 minute, the ridge runners go crazy and they all start running in it and trying to overwhelm. And there is some like strategy to it. Can you have ridge runners approach from different sides of the field at precisely the right time so that you're splitting the gravel stompers? It's a lot of fun. You do this. After the first iteration, then you switch and the gravel stompers become the ridge runners and the ridge runners become the gravel stompers. Same field and go. You go and you do this. Again, it's just a lot of fun. How many iterations can you do? As many iterations as you want. Can you do it in the spring, summer, winter, and fall? Yeah. Fall crunchy leaves adds a whole other element to it. In the winter, snow adds another element to it. A lot of fun and a lot of good learning and just a lot of funny stories. I mean, we've done this where we had one of our gravel stompers running after a ridge runner, miss him, and then kind of backwards fly, nestly plunge into a cow pond. And, this is the dead of winter, so he broke through the ice and thin ice and went right into 2 feet of water, soaked himself. And, of course, we were drying him out by a campfire for the rest of the night. Good stories there. One time a gravel stomper moved over there in the tree line, moved a large branch, a recently fallen branch, pretty heavy, and he didn't even realize he was moving it on to a 2-man team. He just kind of flipped it over to one side, and no kidding, it squished one of the ridge runners. He was trapped underneath it, made a noise. The gravel stompers realized it, but his buddy wasn't trapped, and so his buddy got up and ran away laughing and tagged the light while the poor trapped guy was tagged out by the gravel stompers. And so you see lots of just absolutely ridiculous fun in this. But that's how you play ridge runners and gravel stompers in a nutshell. Even the gravel stompers are learning quite a bit about positional warfare, if I can say it that way. It really is. It's somewhat like tic-tac-toe. You're like, okay, hold on. We have to have those hunter teams out there. Very, very dynamic. A spotter team is less mobile because when you've got, expensive equipment strapped to your head, good luck sprinting and tagging out a ridge runner unless you can remove that from your head very, very quickly. So, you don't want an injury or something like this. The ridge runners obviously are learning stealth. They're learning to move quietly. They're learning to, not draw attention to themselves, and they're learning just amazingly how close you can get to other humans without being discovered. And in fact, it's rare, but once in a blue moon, you have ridge runners who actually crawl their whole way to the tree, tag out on the light, and never were even found by gravel stompers. Now, if that happens with great regularity, then you have to ask yourself, wait, is this playing field giving too much advantage to the ridge runners? So if a ridge runner can do that, then you're saying, the grass or the bushes, or it's just not a suitable field for it. And that's it. That's ridge runners and gravel stompers. I highly encourage it. Again, be careful if you're going to play this in a public space, but it can be played in a public space. I just say minimize the militant look of it. Uniforms and all the high-speed military gear. Probably do not camouflage your face with camo creams. Instead, use a simple balaclava or scarf that can quickly be removed when you see civilians. But again, the other part of this is that civilians shouldn't see the ridge runners, and the gravel stompers aren't really trying to camouflage themselves. They're running around with flashlights. All right, man, go play, have a lot of fun, and we'll see you next week.